So when I need my ego to be pumped up, I should come around and let somebody give a few words about myself. At home, of course, I always get beaten up. If I say I made $1,000, she'll remind me of the 100 I lost. So, what Kunal asked me to do was to talk about my personal success that he calls, and it is a little challenging, is it not? It is a little challenging for you to talk about yourself. And what I'm planning to do is really go through my life story, and rather than defining an entrepreneur, let each one of you take the interpretation and the pearls, if I may say so, of how I achieved what I achieved and use it in the form of entrepreneurship. I have been allocated 15 minutes. I'll try to be brief and go through it. When PK showed that slide of Christopher Columbus, a thought came to my mind. Everything was true then and today, except Christopher Columbus did not make any money. An entrepreneur today, his first criteria is, what am I going to get out of this? Now, having said that, I remember what my father said to me always: don't chase money, money will chase for you. Bottom line is, do the right things for right reasons and the right results will follow. So, I will start as Kunal mentioned. I was born in Zambia, grew up there. It was an apartheid system at that time. At age 12, I had to leave my home for high school education because there was no high school in my town that catered for Indians. At age 16, I was in India and I did my medical education there. I've always been a slight aberration, I would say. And by that I mean there are two ways of dealing with life. You have a set path, get a good education, maybe get a gold medal, be a GPA force candidate, go to corporate worlds, go to the ladders and climb. Or a path where you want to design it for yourself so that you create your own path and vision. Now, those of you that are from India would know what a college president or secretary is equivalent to here. While in my medical school, in the very first year, I became a GS of the college, which is unheard of. And I'm telling this because each time I did something different. I went from India as a first student from that university to do the internship out of the country. And I was an aggressive, business-minded person. While in Zambia, in the first 2 years, I had 4 other practice locations, and we had 4 doctors working there to grow that area. Then I moved to United States on November 26, 1976. Important because it was a Thanksgiving Day and a bicentennial year. I did not know what it means to be, what a Thanksgiving Day is, except that it was a day off for the people who wanted to come and pick me up, so they didn't have to lose a day's wages to come and pick me. I did my residency at Jersey City Medical Center and then came to Tampa in 1982. And I'll tell you something here, that most physicians, when they come out of their residency, are thinking where they will do, what they will do, and where they will go. I had come to Tampa during the time I was doing residency because my brother was here. So for me it was a no-brainer. Weather, everything was perfect here, so that's what I did. But the difference is I bought a practice straight out of residency. I had flown in from India one day, I was flipping through JAMA, which is Journal of American Medical Association, and I saw an ad. And it was those days where there was no email, so a Western Union telegram in the middle of the night I sent to the guy and said, I'm interested in your practice. I flew in a week later and bought the practice. Now I want you to know that I never had money with me, but I had ideas and creative financing from day one. So my strategy was to pay what he wanted, but then negotiated a time of how I will pay him through practice, etc. He was eager to get out. I wanted to come in and I got in. So that's how I moved to Tampa. That when I came in this town and met a colleague, a fellow Indian in my own profession of cardiology, his advice was, don't come to this town, you cannot be successful. And I listened to him, but I knew what I wanted to do. I decided to come. Now, contrary to him, I was instrumental in bringing at least 50 or more doctors to come in this area. And this point I'm making is again to illustrate that as an entrepreneur, you have to have a bigger picture in your mind, a bigger vision in your mind that is not only a direct benefit to you. Now, indirectly, you will always benefit, like PK mentioned, that when you help somebody, it's going to come back to you multifold. And that's the results I saw. So I'll also give you one small example. In 1982, I bought a home on Lake Carroll. Those of you in Tampa know it's a very prestigious area. Right out of residency, I bought a home for over $250,000. There again, I had no money, creative financing. I used the practice balance sheet and the MD of my wife and my name and got the bank to give me almost zero down financing for the house. And my formula was very simple. In those days, they were giving us $300 a night, $25 an hour to moonlight. So I had an arrangement with the hospital, and I told her that worst case scenario, I will spend 10 nights in the hospital, but we'll have what we want. So each time, I never had the money, but that's what I did. I got into managed care vicariously. I would see a patient because he is a patient, and not looked at his insurance. Now, many of you today only know what is an HMO. But in mid-80s, HMO is like a plague. Nobody wanted to touch a patient who had an HMO as his insurance. At that time, I saw this opportunity, and what I did is started buying our practices. Then I said to myself, I started buying practices where I saw that the primary care was making the money and I as a consultant was not, so I started buying the primary care. Then I said, I'm working so hard and the insurance company is making the money, and I went into the insurance business. Now at that time, in 1987, there was a group of doctors in Newport Richie who had started an insurance company called Wellcare. They were about to go bankrupt. So I went to them. I never had the money, but I said, look, let me take over your plan. I'll take your liability, which was about $1 million. And I said, if I am successful, I had the option to buy the plan in 5 years. So the revenues at that time were $1 million. Let me back up. When I bought the practice, my first month's revenue was $3,000. I had one full-time employee and one part-time, and I was wondering how the heck somebody makes $100,000 a year. Then I move on with this story. I got this HMO, and by 2002, when I exited, my revenue was about $100 million a month, and I had over 1,200 employees. A true American dream story. Then I had a non-compete for a while, so I went into the medical informatics. I then took over a company with $1 million revenue in the EMR space, built it up to about 35 million, and sold it for $65 million in about 4 or 5 years. During that time, I had also been a quote-unquote angel funder on another healthcare technology company, where every month, what happened is I put in a little bit of money, and then to protect my money, I had to put in more money, and I kept putting more money. So every month I would fund this company's payroll, and I will get a lot of flack from my wife. What am I doing, wasting all this money here? Fortunately for me, Providence Group invested $200 million in a company which I thought nobody will give me any money for. So I had a great exit. So I had, by the time 2007 came, had a company, first company did over $1 billion, and these 2 other companies, and my non-compete was ending on July 31, 2007. Satya, we were in China at that time, and I had got an email from this same investor of my software company that there is a health plan in trouble, and they are looking for somebody to fund it. And I sent him an email to say that if he's willing to sit down and finish the deal at one session, I'll do it. So I got in a room, and he started making all the presentation, and I said, forget all that, tell me how much money you want. He said 60 million, I said 40, and we settled at 50. And in an hour we left the room. And I took that company. At that time it had 100 million in revenue, and had lost $13 million in 2007. Today, in the healthcare that I am, I have $1.4 billion in revenue, and very, very profitable. So, I am just talking about a series of successes. I took over a plan in California about 11 months ago. Had 12,500 members, about 120 million in revenue. Today has about 37,000 members and about 350 million in revenue. And I just exited from that company, and I might see the rewards by end of October, just in time to make sure Obama does not take away more money from me. And I'm waiting for the year anniversary before I sell it. But the contract is done, and I'll be there. Now, I will conclude by talking about some challenges that I went through. I was caught in the wind of investments in real estate. And I had significant real estate baggage, now what I call, but that time I thought I was going to make millions of dollars that I got into. And for illustration purpose, I'll tell you this, that suppose you have $10 million in debt and you have $2 million cash in your assets. Now you can add as many zeros as you want afterwards, but concept is the same. And the bank comes to you after you. At one time they wanted to throw money at you, but now they want to come in. And they want to go after it. If they take away that 2 million, you don't have at 6% or 8% interest, you have enough money to survive for 3 years. But if the bank takes away the 2 million, now you are broke already and you are in trouble. So I have gone through those type of challenges where I myself, without any attorney or anybody, negotiated my way out of these things by negotiating a good interest rate, rode through the tribe, and now on the verge of getting through all that, and we'll be building a $150 million hotel on the Clearwater Beach. So I will pause here because I think I'm running out of my time, and answer any questions from anybody if you want. But I hope you learned that it is by thinking out of the box, when other people did not see opportunity, to find opportunities there, taking it, being bold, taking some aggressive steps, and being very entrepreneurial or creative, that I was able to get here. So in my life now today, I have been as a physician in practice, as a health plan owner, as software company developer, and by any standard in real estate world, very few people will come to my comparison in hotel ownerships. I own hotel in Pittsburgh, 700 bed Hilton, Tucson, etc. and here. So I have had the good fortune of being in many fields and starting from zero and reaching into multi-million dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in all aspects. And I credit that partly to not partly, a lot to my parents and my upbringing, to God and the people like you all around that have always been there to work with me and help me on my needs as I go along. Yes.
I understand your great ideas, but next come the execution. So how do you manage to find talented people who can take your ideas and convert them into reality?
My approach to employees or partners or people has been very different. The people I have selected in all my endeavors have never been the top. Say like I'm in health plan, I don't go and hire an executive from another health plan. What I like to look for is a younger person, 2 or 3 levels below, who is hungry and wants to get there. I have one rule in my company, that there is only one person who does not work, and that's me. Everybody else has to work. So I never want an executive who is used to putting his feet up and have an assistant. So in my office, between 4 or 5 of us, there is only one assistant, and I don't make that everybody should get an assistant and things like that. But to answer your question, find young, hungry people who are enthusiastic, energetic, and want to make a progress. Yes.
How do you decide what you want to invest in? Question number 1. Question number 2 is, what still drives you to make more money?
See, I have always bet on myself. If you look at my life story, I have only invested in something I have done. I am trying to now learn what PK and others do about investing into others, because so far in my life, anything I have done, either I am a super majority, 80-90%, or I am not there. Because good, bad, or indifferent, I have a very strong mind. It's my way or highway. And I cannot do that with other people's money and if I'm a minority player. Part of the reason I was successful in the health plan here also is because I could do what I want. I can make the decision I want. I have no big bureaucracy, board, or people to consult. So whether I make money or lose, it's on me. So I have always invested in myself, except for one of these ICA system, but thank God it paid off, about 700% return on my investment. Okay.
Excellent stories. He has another question too.
Oh, sorry.
Second question, sir, is what drives you to keep doing what you're doing?
See, that's a funny part, and they say in life, if you are enjoying something, it's not like work. I mean, there are some people here, Gwanit is here, or some of you that work with me, they get my emails at 2 a.m., 1 a.m., I call people at 11, but it's because I'm having fun all the time. When I was a physician, when I went on vacation, I would give my work to 3 doctors. One would take care of the nursing home, one would be on call, and third will work on hospital calls. All 3, when I come back, will complain it was a lot of work. Well, I was doing that work alone. And but I still attended all the social events. I was always there. I was the one to start India Festival, to do this, a lot of things. So I really enjoyed thoroughly what I did. And I would spend more than any, you have to be passionate. If you want to be successful, you have to be persistent, you have to be passionate, and it's hard work. I mean, if somebody thinks it happens, you usually forget it. So those are some of the qualities that you need. And all the time doing the right thing. When you take an unethical step, you may climb up, but you'll fall very fast. So those are the issues.
One question. When you're on the way to success, what did you fear the most and what do you fear the most now?
This may be a difficult question for me to answer because I had never measured success in the end point. The end point arrived vicariously. Say on the case of first company, there came a point where the capital needs were getting so much that either I have to bring in somebody to take it to the next level, and I knew I was never going to work for anybody, so I got out at that time. But, so I had never a fear because I was doing something that I wanted to do. I evolved in the HMO business from a primary care to a consultant to network development to the whole thing. So I was from sweeper to CEO knowledge-wise, and it just built up. When I stopped practicing, the revenue was $100 million by the time in 98. And by the time in 2002 I exited, it went over $1 billion. But so now what I fear the most, I'm starting to learn now. When I was in my first exit, I thought I'm still invincible. I was never planning my retirement, never worrying about my assets. Now I am starting to think, so first you struggle all the way to build your money. Now you are struggling to say, how am I going to protect that asset, preserve it, and make it do something good in the world? So that's my challenge right now. That if I leave, and my son is here, so I have been spending his inheritance quite frequently. but you know, in spite of that, there will be things left over, and the challenge I'm facing that 100, 200, 300 years from now, what I did, what will it do? Because I have my own vision of trying to help the world and improve the world, and like he mentioned, create jobs, etc., how can I be able to do that? So that's the part now for the first time when I'm planning my ultimate departure from here, I'm starting to think about. And when I was 50, I never thought about that.